actually, there was something that actually was really surprised to learn after you and I had spoken for the first time. Because I made posts for the episode you were on not too long ago here, and then Brimstone reached out and said, "Hey, Devanny?" I was like, "Well, I just met her more or less for the first time through Zoom. We were talking about so and so." He was like, "Yeah, I haven't seen her in such a long time." And then knowing, Brim was like, I was like, "How do you know her?" He's like, "I know everybody." I was like, "Okay, fair enough." So what was funny is that he actually had I think he said to me that he used to come across with you out in the East Coast through several conventions and whatnot, and then once you moved out to the West Coast, or I guess once you made your base with the West Coast, he hadn't seen you in
Yeah.
quite some time. So
Yeah.
I just thought it was interesting because because I do work with him as well too, and there was that one link that that he was pointed out before that because it's not the first time he's come across with me where he says, "Hey, how do you know this guy?" I was like, "Well, I just happen to know him through this and that." He's like, and I was like, "How do you know that?" I was like, "I know everybody." I was like, "Okay, fair enough." So I just thought it was interesting that he pointed that out here, and I guess what I wanted to start off with that is because um, you know in this industry that you're in, there is a very small circle of people that I happen to come
Yes.
across that because I happen to talk with not on camera here, but I have spoken with Narissa, sorry, Janine Narissa Scott,
Stop,
Southcott,
Scott. Yes.
right, and then I also talked to Jonathan as well too, who I've had on my show. And then, in fact, I remember when I was actually reaching out to Jonathan, I was telling him, "Hey, I would like to have you on my show. I spoke with your wife, but she's a little busy right now. We're gonna eventually get something set up together here." And he was like, "Yeah, my wife was listening to your episode that you had with Devanny, and she really liked it." I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, we know them." I was like, "Really?" So then he came on the show
Yeah.
and talked about you guys as well too, both you and Brandon. And then, of course, Gary, who we spoke with before about. So
Yes.
it seems like
It's a
as
very
time is
small
gone by,
world.
right?
It's and I keep seeing how much smaller it is. I
Yeah,
went last night to a premiere of a friend of mine, and like the entire theater, I was like, I have like 1 degree away from everybody in this room. I think when you've done it for a while, the circle gets smaller and
yeah,
smaller. And like also when you find awesome people,
yeah,
that circle's even smaller. So
yeah.
like, like the South, I mean, I, I actually haven't formally met the Scots. We kind of became friends and fans of each other
Right.
online. Of the movies, and so now we're talking about working together, and they're actually going to the Black Mass screening at Fright Fest in the UK because that's their
Right.
turf, and they're helping me with like some press and stuff out there. So um, Gary, of course, is wonderful. We've been friends with Gary for a long time. He does a lot of work with my husband Brandon Slagle on the
Yeah.
action scene. So everybody's kind of like, if you're a cool person who loves cinema and is like down to support other artists, it's a small little group, and we
Yeah.
all kind of tend to find each other. But it's funny with your friend too, like something I've been talking about noticing recently is like East Coast and West Coast don't really interact with each other.
Yeah. I kind of picked
I
up on that
realized
too.
that like when I moved out here, I thought a lot of people quit, and I realized no, they just don't run in the same circle out here. Like the New York scene kind of keeps to their own, and the LA scene kind of keeps to their own. So
Mhm.
I used to do a lot more filming out there and convention appearances out there, but I haven't in a while. I'm actually right now talking with a couple of festivals in New York for the movie. So hopefully you'll be coming back there and doing a little bit more. So hello, if you're watching.
Well, what's funny is that because you actually were on not too long ago after you and I had spoken with you came on uh Nightmare Toys because I had Christy Adams on my show as well too. And
I love her.
yeah, she's great. Really, really good. It was one of my favorite conversations I've had on the show as well. But when I remember when you had announced, or I think she had announced, I'm not sure who it was, either you or her. It might have been her actually that announced that you were going to be on the show. I remember I reached out. I was like, "Yeah, I had her on my show as well too. She's great to talk. It's going to be a fantastic conversation. I guarantee it's going to be. There's not going to be a boring moment at all in that conversation. And it actually was a really good episode too. I'd watched that whole thing. Really, really good
Oh,
stuff you guys
good.
got into here. So
Yeah, we had like a really, really great conversation. So quick shout out to Nightmare Toys. They're
yeah,
wonderful. They're a merchandise and restaurant horror themed in
yeah,
Las Vegas. So
yeah.
if you find yourself over there, it is a must see, and the most incredible people run it, horror fans, and just great people all around. So definitely go check it out. And yeah, they're phenomenal. I actually just saw them last weekend at Midsummer
Yeah,
Scream.
I
We
saw it
had
on social
booths
media.
just across from each other. Yeah, it was really cool.
So I was going to ask you something real quick because when Brimstone was talking about, he hadn't seen you in some time because you're obviously based on the West Coast. I was wondering because when you left the East Coast, you almost never went back, at least to live there anymore. So do you not
Yeah.
miss it at all?
Um, well, I like warm weather.
Yeah,
Most importantly, I
I
like to
think
not
most East
freeze my
Coasters
ass
do.
off.
Yeah,
So I didn't miss that. But
yeah,
honestly, the number one thing I do miss is the people. The
yeah.
culture is very different out here, and I've been here now, more than half my life. So I am a Cali girl, but I grew up in Jersey, and I I miss the bluntness of the East Coast. I miss
Mhm.
like the straight up. I miss there's a lot of things out there that are valued, respect and loyalty, and like
Yeah,
all the mafioso shit out there. I really miss that out here. Like out here, everyone's so like, everyone's chill, but I come off a little harsh and brass, and like sometimes I talk to people like, or everyone's thinking something in the room, of course I'm the one who says it.
yeah,
But like that's how I grow. So I miss the straight upness
yeah.
of the East Coast. I miss the pizza. Uh i miss i miss the cheese and the meats hanging in the windows over there. Like there's
Mhm.
the food over there is so good. So there's some elements about East Coast that definitely have my heart for sure.
Right. Except
But
the
what I'm
weather.
hoping is just to kind of bridge that gap a little bit more, and just, I hope that a lot of our friends on the East Coast will come visit more often, and I hope to be more involved in the scene out there going forward.
There's something that I was actually preparing to ask you here, but I think I'm just going to ask you now because it's funny that you talked about your bluntness because that was one of the things that I really did appreciate about our conversation the last time we had together here. But what really caught my attention, believe it or not, was way after the fact when I had already uploaded the episode. Well, because if you as for this recording a few days ago was your birthday, so happy belated birthday by the way again.
Yeah.
So I had worked on a small clip, just some various parts of the conversation you and I had, and to post on social media to wish you happy birthday. But there was something that I remember in the beginning of the conversation because I had to listen to not the whole thing, but just I remember certain parts of the conversation that stuck out for me that I wanted to pick apart and compile together. But there's one thing I did not put in there just because it was a elongated question. I started in the beginning, but you had said something in the very, very beginning when I had asked you the question about your career and whatnot, and you had said that you do what you want. You have a very headstrong persona about you,
Yeah.
and then what was funny is that having heard that, the first part I picked out that I started to compile here was that you talked about your faith in God and that I think in the conversation I had asked about how you handle the critiques with the choices you make with your career and how you go about and you know feeling confident with what you're doing under the guidance and whatnot that you pray about and so on. And then you
Yeah.
said something that really caught my attention that I'm surprised I didn't catch it the very first time around because I've listened to the conversation more than once, but for some reason this time it caught my attention for me to ask you about this because you 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 always come off as a person from when I last spoke with you as somebody that is not afraid to take on a challenge. And you
Yeah.
do with the various things you do in your career and the various other things you have up, I'm sure you have coming down the line here that you can't talk about, but I'm sure can be very, very challenging along the way. You seem like you're pretty headstrong about taking on those challenges there. But the one thing that stuck out for me that I was surprised to hear from you was that when you talked about how you you feel I think you said it, if I remember correctly, to the effect of you're not comfortable in saying a prayer in front of a congregation because you think you'd mess up. You'd feel very awkward. And that actually surprised me when I heard that because you don't strike me as a person that would do that because the way that you present yourself, even now when you and I are talking, you have a very straightforward attitude about yourself. And for you to lead a prayer would not be something that I would think of as something that would make you uncomfortable in a situation where you're saying in front of other people, especially when it's something that you're really passionate about, but yet you feel awkward enough to not feel very confident. At least that's the impression I'm getting. So which is
No,
strange.
it's a very good, it's a good observation. It's a good question. Um, I have struggled with leading a prayer or praying out loud in congregation in small groups for Bible study for anything that I was involved with growing up.
Okay.
Um, I've always struggled with it. And I never knew why, because I thought, I'm an actor, like I do improv all the time. This is
Right.
nothing. But I think for me personally, in my personal life, I have a harder time dealing with intense emotions. I have a harder time expressing vulnerability, and that is very much at the core of my faith. I think when I come to connect with God, um, it's a very humbling experience, and I am very, very confident. And I am very loud and in your face, and so when I'm getting ready to connect spiritually, it's a very come down, it's literally a come to Jesus moment.
Right.
So I'm not someone who's comfortable giving up control. I'm not someone who's comfortable being vulnerable. And so it's a humbling, quiet experience for me. And so I don't always have the right words. And
Hmm.
to
Interesting.
try to channel that in a prayer audibly in front of other people who are very confident and comfortable doing so, um, it was just never something that I really was able to grasp. But that's why I mean, even in church, I'll never be the person who stands up and talks about it. I'm not the person who's the loudest one in the room. It's not my calling. Like,
Right.
some people pursue preaching or pursue leadership in the church positions because God gave them that skill to
Hmm.
really connect and vocalize what people need to hear, right? I think that God has tapped me for something different in every aspect of my life. I'm a horse of a different color, just in everything that I say and do. And so I think the way that I connect with God, and that I can commune to other people has always been through my work. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not the one who's going to be able to preach to the choir because I'm just not that typical Christian. But what I can do is I can talk about, horrific murder, and then how God fits into that in my life. So I always had a strength of talking to, like, quote unquote regular people. That's
Right.
really where my strength is, about how you can be a regular person, how you can pursue interests that don't go on, the I'm a Christian poster, that you can still have those relationships and be you. And that's where my talking points really have been more successful, I think, is just shooting the shit with everyday people about their regular lives and
Right.
how God can be part of that.
So there's a reason why I'm asking this question, because I want to lead into this. This one thing I want to bring up with you is that are you are you very, very selective on the roles you take on? And what I mean
Yes,
by that is, okay, so you asked my question then.
very.
So this is the reason I was asking, is because when I thought about I'm mentioning to you about what I had just noticed here with you. Um, I'm always very curious about the type of things that you aren't known for. But let's say, for example, and you let me know how you feel about this. If you were given a part, and it's a part that you actually very, very happy about, that you really, really want to pursue, and it doesn't have to be a film that has to deal with the horror genre, maybe something that you just are really, really excited about, and the director says to you, there's a scene where your character says a prayer in front of the congregation, and these are the lines you're going to say, and you say, perfect, so we're going to have the setup here. But then at the last minute, you already know, as with your experiences on films, that something has changed, where, by the way, we got a good location this time around. It's going to be at a real service. We booked it for 1 hour, and you're gonna be in front of the congregation telling a real prayer. We want to come from the character's point of view, and given your background and given the context of the situation, we feel like you can handle it. You have 15 minutes to prep up. The reason why I'm asking that is because it's a challenge that I'm more really curious to see if you were actually in a situation where you have to do something that you're not comfortable with at all, but do it within the context of your character, whatever that character may be. I really do wonder, would you ever feel prepared to do that, or not even prepared, but more, you know, are you going to be hesitant? I guess is the question I'm asking you, to do something of that sort in a situation like that, where not your comfort level, not something you're used to doing or don't want to do, I would say, but because you're in a position where you're getting paid to do it, you have to do it, and now you have no choice but to do it. How would you handle that for yourself under those circumstances?
That's a great question. And for me, so if I have my lines, got this, no problem, right?
Right.
If they said, hey, we want to add a scene, and can you, as your character, go up and just wing something? There would be a solid minute where I panicked, and then I would be able to do it. And the reason why is because it's not me, it's the
Okay.
character. And so I can take on a persona. I can create the personality of somebody who is comfortable doing it, who does know the right things to say. Um, and it's funny how powerful that can be,
Mhm.
and how important that line is. So, for instance, I've done a lot of things on camera as characters that I would never, ever do. I mean, I've killed people. I've
Mhm.
eaten babies. Like, you know what I mean? There's a lot of things that I have done, that if it was me, I wouldn't even be able to get the thought complete before vomiting. But I mean, me in my personal life, I cry and get nauseous if someone has a paper cut. Like, I'm really, really squeamish. But when I'm a character, like, I can do, Saw torture style sequences and fucking rock them. You know what I mean? Because that separation is so powerful and so crucial. When it depends on the actor itself. Different actors have different process, but
Right.
for me, I don't take a character and then learn the lines and then just deliver them as an actor. I literally kind of put Devanny aside, and I fill up with whatever the role is, whatever the character is. I
Right.
literally take that on. So it's not me doing it. I like to think of myself as a puppet.
Right. Right.
I'm the
Right.
face of something. I'm, making the words happen, but it's not me embodying that. Um, and that process took a while to kind of perfect for me, but I think that's why I'm able to really dive deep into some of these roles, whereas a lot of actors who don't seek out the genre, who kind of just do it for fun or in passing,
Right.
um, the reason that I think some of us become screen queens, the reason some of us can really, really dive into this material is because you hollow out who you are to make room for things that, you're not comfortable with, things that you don't accept personally, things that you struggle with, things that, are morally conflicting. And if you have any of yourself left in that, then you can't fully commit. So would I be
Right.
able to do it? Yeah, if I had spent time with the character and I had made her real, um, then yes, I shouldn't have any problem doing things that Devanny Pinn would be a little nervous about.
So moving on to the challenge aspects here for yourself, because we are obviously, I asked you because I wanted to help you promote Black Mass, because that's the last thing you had talked about is here. You've expressed a lot of excitement and also the hardships that came
Nerves.
with making the film.
Yes.
And it's fun because I actually listened to several other conversations you've had before about the film as well too. And there was actually one thing I can't believe I missed, because I actually heard this conversation well before I spoke with you. But when I went to go back to try to recollect some things that I may have missed beforehand that I want to bring up here, um, you actually did say in a previous interview back in, I think, 2020, if I remember correctly. It was for a Turkish show, if I remember correctly. And you had said specifically you tried one time to direct, not your calling. That's something you never wanted to do
It's
again.
not,
Right. And then you ended up
I know, but
directing
thank
Black
you for
Mass.
throwing it in my face right now. Yes, I totally did say that.
Yeah. So, and I remember, and I can't remember, I can't believe I forgot about that. What to make me to bring it up in the conversation. But the point I'm getting is that, so you were kind enough to give me a chance to check out the film, which I did enjoy. And here's the thing I want to point out specifically about this, because I was actually really curious about the differences in your passion for the movie and not wanting to direct the film because it's not something you really want to do. And I when I say so, please understand. Don't take this the wrong way. I think I understand why, because with the reasons for why you described about why you're so passionate about it, because you had been wanting to make the film for 10 years, if I recall correctly. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay. So obviously I'm not going to get into spoilers here, but what I did appreciate about the film, and then I'm also going to point out one other thing to kind of close out before I have you answer this question for me, is that you pointed out before that you wanted to tell the story more or less through the perspective of the victims here, but you also pointed out before in a previous conversation that a lot of the things that you are going to hear in the movie when it comes to the females in the film, the victims, they're talking about mundane stuff that is almost irrelevant to the overall plot. It's just very, day to day stuff. And when you said that, I remember distinctly thinking if that's going to be something that will almost deter some people because they have a certain perspective on how horror films are meant to be. Obviously, people
Yes.
take things and they change it up a bit for one reason or another. But I was really curious about how you wanted to approach that story. That was one of the reasons why I was really excited to see the film. And when I heard you say that about how the characters in the movie are talking about things that have nothing at all to do with what's really going on because they're oblivious to it all, and yet
Yes.
you, I was just curious about from getting that angle from the more or less the killer in the movie. I was not sure if I really comprehended the initial aspect of what you're trying to approach it until I saw the movie. Because basically, from what I understand, because I've seen the movie twice, but the first time I saw it, I was just want to see for what it was, and then I saw it again to get more analytical with it.
Mhm.
Basically, from what I'm seeing here is that the person, the killer, if you will, in the movie is basically the guy that we are all having to learn just on their observations that they're really not a good person. They're actually kind of creepy. Whereas in some other films of this sort, you have them being presented as likable, very approachable, very
Right.
easygoing, and then you can see why
Right.
they're so happy, they're so appealing to the mass audience. But in this perspective of the film, it's more about how they're doing something that's really creepy. And then if it wasn't real, it was real life. But if someone was doing this to you, you're not gonna look at this good looking person as, oh well, they're just being cute and they're, they probably didn't know any better. And therefore the
Yes.
conversations that we're hearing are the victims are being oblivious to it all because they have no idea what's going on in the outside. And yet we're seeing how the consequences of them not being aware of it, and then the killer more or less breaking in and doing their thing has has major effects that does affect the people that are closest to the victims that we're following here. So it's a very interesting perspective, and I'm really curious to see how people will react to it once it's available for everyone to check out because
Yes.
it's not a very common approach that we see often. And I actually did appreciate that you decided to go down that route. But I also appreciated too that with the killer that we're more or less following here from their perspective, you know, I I have listened to their story before, and now that I understand the approach you're taking on here, honestly, my not to say that my perspective didn't change, it's changed now because of the film, but it gave me a different shade of this person that we're following here that made me realize that I think I've been diluted with the initial reaction that people were saying that hey, we're going to make a story about this said killer here, and we're going to show them in a different light to show them how they really were under these circumstances, but see why they were so appealing and understand why they were able to get away with it. But in this version here, we're actually seeing that they're just complete creeps and they're not the person that we expect them to be because they really weren't that person that we really think they're presented as they were in the media. So a very elongated way for me to kind of introduce this part of the convo here because I think that I I really did hope that what I hope I meant to say is that people will respond well to the film. And if you have another opportunity to tell a story of this sort, maybe not with the same type of story, but something where you have a perspective that's going to be completely different from what we're expecting here. If you get the right people involved and you're being in charge of more or less the production here, I actually thought there's a lot more that could be done with the story of this sort that really could expand on with what you could pull off here. But considering the limitations you have with this film, despite the limitations, I think you still accomplished a great movie here, and I think everyone involved with the film have done a really good job with this story here. So I apologize for the elongated intro here with that, but I
No,
hope you
I
understand why
appreciate
I
your
wanted to do that.
insight and feedback. It's very much welcome and appreciated. And um long story short, yes, you're correct. It's, you know, I'm getting a lot of feedback right now from reviewers and from festivals. It's about to start its festival run,
Right.
and so I'm getting insight from people, fans and professionals, and generally the consensus. I wasn't sure if anyone was going to get it because the story has never been told this way,
Right.
and if I'm not mistaken, I don't think any story has been told this way ever.
Mhm.
So when you break new ground, it can go either way. I wasn't sure if people were going to get it. I wasn't sure if they would be open to it. But that's kind of me in a nutshell as a storyteller, whether it's in front of the camera or behind it, is thinking outside the box and presenting something different, especially stories that you think you know. I like to bring
Right.
something different to it. And so this is definitely that. And it's regarding the dialogue. A lot of the dialogue feels mundane, feels irrelevant to moving the story forward, and yet it absolutely is, because much of the dialogue is taken directly from courtroom testimony or interviews that were done with survivors over the years, about what they talked about that day, things that they did that day. So for me, it was taking the celebrityness, the idolizingness, the almost iconic status of this serial killer, that we thought we knew, that we thought was attractive, we thought was charming. And that's the narrative that we were constantly given. And, for younger generations, he's become like a cult icon. People are tattooing him on them. Like they have
Yeah.
t-shirts with them. It just didn't sit right with me. And so um, I also noticed that because there were so many victims, they all kind of blended together and were glossed over. And there's one or two that are like more prolific than the others.
Right.
But other than that, you don't know their names. You don't know anything about them. But pretty much everyone in the world could tell you something. They know who this person, the serial killer, is. They know something about them. Um, they know he was, charming and good looking. That didn't feel right either. And so I was like, how can I present this where the victims are being given more of a voice? And you can see that this person is not just a charming, good looking dude. He, especially in this particular day, which most of the movie is literally recreating the actual events and the actual moments that happened that day. So you're getting a very real sense of who these people were, the real effect they had. And, prior to this, because this person literally is what authorities coined the term serial killer from, these people that were affected by him did not see it coming in any capacity. In today's day and age, we know warning signs. We know these kinds of people exist. But at
Right.
that time, nobody knew. These poor girls who were just attending college, who had real hopes and real dreams, were hanging out with their friends, were, getting dropped off by their parents, were just going about regular day. They had zero idea what was coming for them. No concept whatsoever that they could put this to. And it was so abrupt. And the fact that he had interacted with many of these girls, had observed many of these girls. And at this point in his serial killing career, he was not taking the time that he did at the beginning, which is the story that more people are familiar with. The process of him perfecting his craft was a lot more charm, a lot more, him being attractive and appealing and luring people in. But at this point in the case, in the events, he was fresh out of jail. He was manic and more aggressive, more sloppy in what he was doing, and there was less time for him to be suave and more need for him to satisfy this thing that had gotten out of control.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was a more interesting story that hadn't been told yet, something we needed to remind people of. This is not some hot guy flashing you a smile. the most prolific serial killer in American history. This is someone with so much intelligence and so much rage and evil, and that should be his legacy. Not this glamorized look. And more so than that, these people, not even just the women that he attacked and killed, the families that were never going to be the same from that, the friends, the people at the college, all these people's lives were abruptly changed forever. And even the people who have survived it and gone on and lived their lives, they are consistently and forevermore tied to this horrible human being, no matter what. They try to move on with their lives and they're constantly contacted and constantly pointed at and constantly referred to as the person who interacted with this person or was victimized by this person. That's their identity and their life, and they had no control over it any more than being attacked. That didn't sit right with me. And so I really wanted viewers to think about the fact that we give so much notoriety to people who commit crimes.
Right.
We know their names, we know their agendas, we're tattooing them. It's just ridiculous. And meanwhile, the people whose lives are horrifically impacted by these criminals are irrelevant in their own story. And I just didn't think that should be something that should continue. And so I saw a way through this movie to kind of present that, which is not something that's being talked about. And so my hope is that whether or not you really like or embrace this movie, that it makes you think about not only this crime, but crimes in general, just a little bit differently. Like maybe it'll occur to you, I wonder how that person's feeling. I wonder how that family is enduring. I wonder what it's like to live with that for the rest of your life. And we should be giving some consideration to the people impacted and not the people who are committing these crimes. And so that's what this story aims to do. And it does it as honestly as possible. I don't think any other depiction ever, despite tons of media on this person. I had to really, really, really dig just to find out the names of some of these people who were impacted, just to let alone find out anything about them. And so so hopefully this is just going to start some conversation and start planting the seeds,
Right.
that we as society just think about this kind of stuff a little bit differently.
So with the films being coming out in these upcoming festivals you're referring to here, and then even if because earlier this year you actually went to what was it? It wasn't Cannes Film, but it was a different type of festival out in Paris or in France.
It's the March to Cannes at March to Film at Cannes Film Festival.
Okay.
So it's like a subgenre of it. It's a screening festivals for like buyers for around the world, distributors for around the world. So we played there for people who were hopefully going to see and cover the film or help get it out there.
Okay. So with that being more or less the premiere at that point, were you nervous getting into that now as opposed to how things are going with you? Because now that some people have seen the film, you've been able to talk about it more than one occasion, including this one, and then with the two upcoming premieres that's coming. One is in Miami, if I recall correctly, and the other was in London. So,
Yes.
And I have the dates written down too, just in case I forget. So, Popcorn Frights on August 20th, and then Fright Fest in the UK on August 27th in London.
27th.
So
Yes.
you've already had the film screened for a few people to check out in preparation with these conversations here, and then the festivals here. Prior to that premiere in France, and then have things changed for you along the way, I'm not going to say your perception of directing, but more or less about how you may have looked at the production for yourself after hearing people's opinions about the movie. Like maybe, I'm not sure if you had any sort of preconceived notion that how you thought you could have handled things made a bit more differently, or that you were completely happy with it, and then you hear people's perception about the films that may have changed your perception about how you looked at the movie beforehand that now it may have changed a little bit, whether it be for the better or for the worse. But I'm curious about how you feel how certain things about the film's perception for yourself has changed along the way.
There has been an evolution, to be honest with you.
Okay.
So, I've done a lot of movies. There's always a little bit twinge of nerve, like, hey, is anyone going to like this, or
Right.
how's people going to respond to it? Um, there are some stories that are a little more important to me than others, and so that wavers on that. But overall, like, I've been doing it enough now where I'm pretty confident about what I do. I select movies and roles based on um, knowing and respecting my audience, and so I generally know at this point who movies are for and who's going to like them, who isn't, and I'm okay with that. But
Right.
this movie was different because it was so important to me, because it was so personal. I had a lot of nerves that I haven't had since beginning my career, and so it's been kind of an emotional roller coaster on it. And I know what the movie could do, and so I'm very hopeful for that. And leading up to my screening in Cannes, it was the first time anyone was going to see it, including
Right.
people who were involved in the movie, and the first few reviews, which I knew were really important. And also, it was my first time at Cannes. So it was just a lot of new, a lot of unknown variables. And as we talked about before, I'm not good with giving up control. So I was like sweating bullets, to be honest with you. But people showed up, reviewers showed up. The impact was kind of like, oh snap. And then I started getting feedback from people saying, hey, I can't shake this. Hey, this is sticking with me. Hey, I'm
Yeah.
thinking about things differently. So it right off the bat did what I was hoping that it would do. And that's not necessarily to say that, like, again, I want everyone to love this movie. That's not the overall goal with it. It's just to start having those conversations, which is exactly what happened. So from there, we made kind of a big splash at Cannes, and festivals started reaching out or responding positively to the movie based on some of the initial reviews and the presentation we had at Cannes. And from there, we started getting selected. We have a lot more film festivals that have since reached out or planning to program us that I can't announce yet because they haven't gone public. But overall, the reviews coming out of Popcorn Frights and Fright Fest ahead of time that are going to be released during the weekends they're premiering, overwhelmingly, people are not only responding well to the movie, they're saying they're impacted by it, and they're taking these talking points that I was desperate to try to establish. And I was nervous because it was my first time directing, and I'm not someone who's like, I can do anything. I know what I do. I know what I do well. And that's generally what I pursue. So I know, like, it's kind of trendy right now. Everyone wants to be a director. I didn't want to be a director. I literally did this because
No
it
one else
was a
would do
smaller
it.
budget. And honestly, like, everybody who I thought director wise that could handle this material and really do what I wanted it to do, um, was way, way, way too expensive for what I had to work with on this. So
Mhm.
what do I do? It came down to either I had to do it or it was going to get left on the table. And because it is, now that you've seen, such a different kind of movie, I didn't know if there would ever be another opportunity to successfully pitch and get this thing going. I didn't know if anyone else was going to get it. So I took it on out of necessity. And I don't necessarily fancy myself a director, but I knew so specifically what I wanted to do with this movie and how I wanted to do it that I felt confident that I could take it on. But I was worried that my inexperience in directing would hinder um, appropriately getting the messages out that I wanted to through the film. So that was the source of a lot of my nerves and my lot of
Yeah.
hesitation. But at this point, there's been enough feedback from critics and festivals and just general viewers all across the world. That was the other thing, is I didn't know if international would respond to an American story and respond to such a unique telling of an American story. But so far, everyone's really, really, really embracing it. And everyone's asking me to direct more. So
Mhm.
So shit.
So, well, here's what
We'll see.
I want to. I'm actually curious about that with you now because you talked about just now that people are asking you to direct here or asking you to direct more some other projects. Um, is that a welcome uh opportunity for you to do something? I mean,
You know,
I know you said you didn't want to do it, but I'm actually just curious about just the idea that someone is, or several people in this case, are reaching out to say, "Hey, we saw your movie. We would like for you to direct this movie." I mean, just that alone, does that give you a sense of confidence? Like, I think I did a pretty good job. They're giving me this opportunity.
this is going to be a whole sidebar that I don't want to go too deep in because it's not PC, but
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the movie itself or if it's, right now female directors are very trendy.
Mm,
It's
that's
very
very so.
box checky.
Right.
Yeah. And so I don't know if it's like, oh, she made a movie, she got it done. It's not bad and it's getting out there everywhere. Like, let's have her do it again. I don't know if it's that or if it's they really, really liked my direction on the movie.
Right.
Um, I guess ultimately it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but I I at first was like, "There's no way in hell I'll ever do this again," because it was stress. This shit's stress. I don't know why anyone wants to be a director. It's hard and it's stressful, and if it failed, it's your name all over this fucking thing.
Right.
You can't even hide behind it.
Right.
So I don't know that I was not seeking out to direct anymore,
Right.
but if I'm at this point now where I have a new little sense of confidence coming off of BLACKMASS, seeing that like I really had a unique idea and people are responding positively to it. So I like that is working. So I don't want to say no to maybe making that process work again. I also hate saying no to money, so there's that. But if the right story came
Of
around
course. Right.
and I felt confident that I had an idea for how to tell it, then I would consider directing more. But I don't want to just do anything because why not? That's just I have to be passionate about it. I have to see
Right.
a bigger picture with it. I have to have an idea of how I want it to go.
So this actually leads me to something I wanted to speak with you about to kind of more just go off to close this off here with you. So I actually was because there's a lot that I thought of, believe it or not, when I was compiling the short clips together for your birthday, and
Thanks.
so one thing led into another one in terms of the various thoughts that came to mind about the perspective on how you look at yourself in certain situations, and you already clarified a lot for me about what how you would handle yourself under certain situations when it comes to working on set, doing something you're not really comfortable with, and understand how you would be able to differentiate yourself and playing it as a character and so on. All that stuff like makes sense to me now. But what I'm actually really curious about with you though is, and I hope you don't mind me asking this here, but I'm actually really curious about how you conduct yourself under. So, for example, with Black Mass, you talked about how stressful it was. Now, because you're also a producer as well too, and an actor, that you understand the responsibilities in each of those positions there. But when it came to directing, that clearly was the one that really just it was the hardest on you.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm curious about asking this question is because you've had many years of experience in working on several different movies in various capacities. I'm sure you have great days where things are going smoothly, whether it be not the whole production, but just segments of the production. And there are days where maybe you're not happy with things, the way things are going for you for whatever the reason may be, whether it be personal, professional, whatever the case is. But then I'm sure along the way you have come to find out a lot about how you may have conducted yourself before in one previous set that differs now in the next one. Because of these new set of challenges you've taken on, especially with directing, I'm actually really curious about how you think you've handled yourself when it comes to managing the set as a director, whereas before you didn't want to do it, but now that you have to do it, I'm actually curious to see if you were, I'm not gonna say bitter, but almost like if I'm not sure if you approached the set more in a, what's the best way I can describe it? If you had approached it more with, okay, because I have to do this here, I'm gonna be try to be absolutely positive this whole situation, but I don't want to do this here, but I know in order for me to get the story done, I have to do this. So, we'll just roll with the dice and to see what comes out of it and make the hope for the best. Or is it a situation where maybe you realize, okay, I'm gonna have to micromanage every little aspect of this production and make sure that it comes out to the best of our ability here, and I'm gonna bring the right people involved, but I'm gonna select the people that I want to work with here under these circumstances, so I know for a fact that when I tell them to do a job, they'll do it in a heartbeat without faltering along the way. The reason I'm asking is because you're a very headstrong person. I actually am really curious how you handled yourself under those circumstances. And again, I hope you don't mind me asking that question because I just want to know how you go about it and how you think you would handle it better, not better, but maybe different in the next set of events if you were presented this opportunity again that you actually would take on.
It's a good question. It's a hard one to answer, PC. I trying to think about how to word this correctly.
This is a private conversation then.
There's more to have. We'll
Yeah.
have a sidebar on this one off the record. So I, because of my inexperience, I'm not sure where the fault lies exactly, to be honest with you. I
Right.
had a hard time directing. I don't know that the people working underneath me really understood what I was trying to do. I don't know if they respected the vision for it. I don't know if I had a hard time commanding my team.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure why exactly. I don't know if it's being a girl or being my age or being an actress mainly, or just doing something so outside the box they didn't understand what it was, or not trusting me to be able to pull it off. I'm not sure what it was, but there was a lot of pushback, a lot of
Mm.
trying to pull off something that just was not quite coming together. So I was very stressed out and nervous throughout the shoot that I was not going to get what I sought out to do. And I felt very confident about the story and the way that I wanted it told. Like an example of that is, my crew. My crew was experienced, and they, when you shoot a movie, you shoot a bunch of different angles and then you flip the world and you shoot the other side of it, right?
Right.
That's full coverage of a 360 scene. And for me, I never wanted to flip the world because the movie is from the perspective of this individual. And so despite what you would stereotypically do for coverage in a narrative film, this was, you only film what he would be seeing or hearing. Um, and it wouldn't always be the most obvious choice. So if the framing for a movie is very stereotypical, like this is what it would be, maybe even though this is where the action is, he sees something shiny over here. I want to film that. And we're not going to see the other side of this scene ever, even though we missed the coverage for some of our actresses or some of the people who are happening, some of the action, because it's all from his perspective. I only wanted to see and hear and experience as the audience through his eyes what he would be privy to. So that was something that I was consistently getting pushback for. They did not understand. I think they thought because I was a first time director that I just didn't know what coverage was. So there was some really unique challenges in trying to do something very, very, very different. I think maybe if I had chosen a more run of the mill approach to
Traditional.
a story, I think it might have been a smoother transition and way less stressful to try to direct it. But I don't like to do anything the easy way. So I tried the most weird formulatic attempts at this story I possibly could. And and it was tooth and nail for a lot of it. But ultimately, because I am so headstrong, I got my way. I don't have a lot of friends afterwards, but I felt very confident this was the right way to tell it. And so I'm not into gloating by any means, but I feel validated at this
Mm,
point that, you know, something so out there is being received so well. It just shows that, I need to be more confident in myself and what I do know, and trust that when something feels very right for me, that I owe it to myself and to a project to stand my ground for it and fight for that.
so that's the reason why I wanted to ask this question to kind of more just close off here because yeah, without really getting too much into it from my perspective here, but I guess what I could say is I could use as a point of reference about how in the first conversation you and I had, how, I remember asking about the experience you had at the time when making the movie, and without saying it out loud, I sort of figured out what it was without saying it, but watching the movie though, I'm really curious to see really the general audience, if you will, about when they watch this movie, what the consensus is going to be with them. And
Yeah.
I really do hope that they do respond to the film very, very well, and at the same time understand the perspective you want to take on here. Which it's so funny that because you've talked about before on more than one occasion. Once you and Brandon had done House of Manson, then all of a sudden there's a slew of other Manson projects come out after the fact.
Yes.
And it
Yeah.
seems like you had. I hope you don't mind me bringing this up here too. But when Breakout had come out, what comes out after the fact? There was a new movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger called Breakout, which literally has the same exact plot as this movie. I was like, did they just not watch that film? And I mean, so
No,
it
they
seems like
did. They just completely blatantly ripped it off.
right.
And
So
that has happened to almost every movie that I have done. Almost
so
everyone.
so I'm pointing this out here because there's some, like I said before, there's a lot with you that I have come to learn about along the way, and also respect a great deal too, because as for people who don't understand that, Will Kaufman I've spoke with recently, and I think he said it the best.
He's awesome.
The industry, yeah, he's awesome. The film industry is an endurance test. It's you have to just keep grinding and grinding,
Yeah.
grinding, and it's not for the weak of heart. And I agree with that 100%. And there are some people out there who may not know the hardships that comes with making a movie. And when I hear your story in this case and understand the more or less the behind the scenes of what may have happened there and what you more or less hinted here, I do appreciate the hard work that went into this movie here because I did understand what you were trying to go for. And in fact, me listening to the conversation you had before about the making of this movie and getting a certain perspective that was really appealing to me, that made me look out for the movie and that from that angle there, I think in my opinion, what you've been able to accomplish here did work out for the movie. Now, I also do hope too that whatever upcoming project you have here, whether you're directing or producing, I have 100% confidence that with whatever you're going to pursue here, that whatever you're investing here, it's going to be next level stuff, in my opinion. Because with the amount of work you've been able to pull off in your career, and then with the various things you're working on now, with Breakout coming out here, of course, obviously Black Mass is in the festival run at this time right now, and I don't know what other projects you're working on, but I'm more than confident knowing that with what you're taking on here, whether it be something you're doing on your own or with Brandon, that you guys are going to be working on something that's going to be really excited to get people to be anticipating with what you guys are working on here. So for me, this is me again giving you your flowers because I did appreciate the movie. I really did enjoy it, and I'm not bullshitting when I say this. I really did mean that. But I'm also really hoping that with whatever people come across with this movie, that they take the time to understand the hard work that went into that and hear your story about what it took to make that movie as well too, and understand that even though there was a lot of setbacks and a lot of limitations, the way the film had turned out, despite those setbacks and limitations, there, you still made a movie that I thought turned out quite well, and I hope that people will respond very well to as well too. So, again, that's
Thank
me
you.
giving your flowers. I know as of this
I want
recording
to
here,
say too, just quickly, like the team on this really did work very hard.
right?
They all really, really, really worked their ass off for it. My cast took it incredibly seriously. Um, Most of them thoroughly researched their people they're portraying. They care very much about respecting them and the material, and hopefully the impact that this will have for a positive for survivors and their families. So it's, as you said, anytime you can get a movie made, it's really a miracle.
Yeah.
And it's not always successful, it's not always a hit, but a lot of people work really, really hard on these. And with this particular film, we're in it for the right reasons. So I do hope that everyone will check it out and give it a chance. And if nothing else, take away some talking points from it, or learn something new about the case that they didn't know.
So just to make sure people keep an eye out for is that the film is going to be premiering on August 20th out in Popcorn Frights in Miami, and then of course on the 27th of this month at Fright Fest out in the UK in London, in which I know you said you're going to be meeting out there for the first time, both Janine and Jonathan Southcott out there, which I'm actually really excited because I know that because Jonathan's made it known before that there are some projects that he's working on with Brandon. Hopefully will come to fruition down the line here, which I'm really, really excited for. I was previewing some stuff along the way too. But anyways, for me, I want to give you nothing but high praise because I've been very fortunate to talk with a lot of people in the industry that I don't think I've ever imagined the amount of impact some of the people that I've been able to talk with on my show, and still being able to maintain some form of communication here throughout this time, that have left a lasting impression on me, that made me look at things a lot more differently when it comes to the amount of work they put into their projects. Whether some of the projects didn't turn out as well as they hoped, or it turned out a lot better, but for some reason people didn't catch on to it. But it's a very fickle thing. But yet somehow I always feel like the people that stuck with it this whole time have got to have the strongest mind to be able to withstand all the hurdles they have to go through here. So I appreciate all the
or we're a little nutty because my goodness.
Well, it is a nutty business there, but I appreciate for all you guys to partake in it, because I've been able to see some great projects out there that, had it not been for you guys being able to do this stuff here, who knows if I would have ever been had the opportunity to still stay invested for this length of time that I have been here, especially with the
it's
indie
people
side.
like you that give us the opportunity to talk about it too, right? Like I think with VOD, the content that's out there, there's so much content.
Yeah.
And so sometimes gems can get overlooked. Sometimes duds get over publicized. You know what I mean? So there's just so much. And so it's very easy to get lost in the shuffle one way or another. And so that's why, shows like yours are so crucial to give us the opportunity to talk about the good, the bad, the easy, the hard, and just, make a little bit more of an indent for some of these projects. And, when you have so much content, so many movies, so many shows to consume, you don't think about things like how much time it took to make it or how hard everyone worked on it. Like it just kind of gets lost in the shuffle. So I'm really grateful that you have me on and connect me or help me find other talented filmmakers, storytellers, actors that I maybe had not had on my radar either. I've definitely connected with or discovered some fun stuff through your show. So it's part of the community, a very valued part, and I love it. And then of course, you and I get to nerd out about cinema, which is super fun too. So thank you for checking it out and for having me on to talk about it.
Well, thank you. And also I wanted to give a shout out to my wife, because she actually wanted me to tell you this, because she loved your small role in The Flood, and she actually did enjoy the movie as well too. And she actually really looked, because I was watching, because I told this to Brandon that I seen the movie, and I thought he did a great job directing that movie, which was The Dawn.
Oh, good.
So she loved your role in that movie as well too. She actually did enjoy the film as well. So she wanted me to tell you that she appreciates the hard work you put into those respective roles in those films here. So that's her props.
What's her name?
Kat.
Kat. Hi, Kat. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. And I look forward to maybe connecting with you on social media so we can chat about it more. And thank you for watching.
All right. So for the cameras, I want to say thank you again for being on the show. And I would love to do this again whenever you have some upcoming project down the line here. I'd be happy to help out in any way that I can. So until then, until the next time we see each other again. And I hope you nothing but great success, and cheers to you.
Thank you so much. Bye, guys.
All right.